Welcome to Females Doing Cool Shit. Welcome to my very first episode. Super pumped to create this space for women to tune in and be inspired by the stories that I am going to share with you along the journey. I decided to create this podcast to showcase all of the cool chicks that I know and have been motivated by and inspired by in some stage of my life, whether that's within my businesses or outside of my businesses. I guess for me, I used to watch my mum as I grew up, always surrounded by women. So we would attend every single park on the weekends around Noosa on the Sunshine Coast. And mum just always was surrounded by women that just had this village mentality, and they would all support each other. They would all feed each other's kids. I guess growing up, we were always in somebody's house in the street. Somebody's mum was feeding all the village kids, I guess. And I watched my mum have these incredible relationships with women and be inspired by so many different women that I took on that, I guess, level of respect for women and the support systems that are out there. And although each episode will showcase all of the females that I believe are doing cool shit, I couldn't start this potty without an episode on me. I guess for you to tune into the Females Doing Cool Shit, you need to know who I am and I guess my story over the years. So thank you to the listeners who know me or have followed my story online over the years. In my social media, I am very real, very vulnerable, and I share all the good, the bad, and the ugly. So hello to all the new listeners as well. My name is Ren. My name is actually Renee, but I couldn't honestly tell you the last time that someone has called me Renee. I feel like I'm doing something naughty. But my name is Ren. I'm a Queensland girl and a true beach local here in Noosa on the Sunshine Coast. I grew up here. I went to school here. I love my life growing up here. And I went to Sunshine Beach State High. Absolutely love it. I actually love it so much that my friend Alexis and I, we tend to break into the school in like good ways. We just like kind of walk around the outside and jump the fence and look at all of our old classrooms once a year, just because we're still so connected to the school. I lived in the dance studio and in the fashion room. I also lived in the drama room, sometimes in the Italian room. If I could stay in the classroom long enough, I was often kicked out of the Italian classroom for talking too much. But I loved my life here growing up on the Sunshine Coast. I have two siblings. So I have my brother, Milan. He is a very successful graphic designer. His Instagram is Stay Bold. So my brother does loads of designing for really big bands and sort of band merchandise. And he also builds websites. He actually made my website, and he does a lot of my logo design as well. My sister, she's a little bit older than us. She lives in LA. She's actually a jewelry designer. She just designed a ruby for Taylor Swift, actually. She's pretty incredible, and she just came to visit us for the first time post-COVID. So I guess she's a female in my life too that inspires me and pushes me to dream big. She has had her own swimwear label for many years, and also to a fashion label. So she owned a cafe in Sydney when she used to live in Australia. So she's done a lot in regards to females doing cool shit as well. Maybe I'll have to get her on the potty if she comes back from LA again. After I finished school in like 17 million years ago in dinosaur years, I went traveling around the world. So I booked an around the world ticket with my best mate at the time, Daniel. Shout out to Cleesy. Daniel and I went traveling all around Europe. We went through Asia, traveled through Asia. I went to America, did loads of traveling until I decided to come back and really, really focus on what I wanted to do with my life. After traveling, I then got my teeth stuck into my education degree when I got home. I ended up living and teaching in a remote First Nations community called Arakoon after I did my teaching degree. I was just fresh out of uni. My boyfriend at the time that I was dating for over 10 years, Kane and I moved there together, and he was a local plumber. Kane and I, we were together a really long time. Shout out to Kane, gorgeous man, who now has a baby and a beautiful wife, and he also lives on the Sunshine Coast, which is awesome for him. We grew up together, and I guess we taught each other so much around figuring out our first relationship. We were together for a really long time, and I think now looking back, Kane and I were just really great mates, and we moved to Arakoon together. We saved a shitload of money there, and we made a big difference in a very small remote community, and we were only there for 2 years together. He then stayed on longer when I came back. But living in a remote First Nations community is quite, I guess it's powerful. That's the word I would use to describe it. And teaching there and being the local teacher and having kids hanging off your fence in the morning and in the afternoon and coming in for dinner, and you just truly are a part of the community there. And that was a big shift in, I guess, my identity as a woman, and figuring out who I was and what I wanted from the world, being in that community, because I knew then and there that my purpose within my life was to give back to communities, no matter where it was that I was going to be. So Kane was my first boyfriend, my first real relationship, and with that came many, many lessons, and we were actually engaged. He proposed to me and we were going to get married. And I kind of knew the last year in our relationship mentally I was like, kind of breaking up with him in my brain. I just knew that Kane and I, we were just little kids and we grew up together and we relied on each other for a lot, and I just knew that for me it was just time to move on. So I stayed for a year after I mentally kind of broke up with him in my brain, and then he stayed in Arakoon and I left, and I left him and I broke up with him. And at the time he was devastated. He probably looks back now and thinks, God, that was the best thing to ever happen to me, because he then went on and met his now wife, who was a teacher in Arakoon after I left. So that's amazing for him. And I moved home and I was ready to move on with my life and see what the next chapter of my life, how it unfolded. So I moved home back to the coast. I moved in with my brother into our family house, not with my parents, into a different family house. My parents, I should mention them. My parents are true Sunshine Coast locals. My mum actually moved to Coolum Beach when she was 18, and she worked at the one restaurant in Coolum. My dad was in Noosa, and he was in like the first surfing team in Noosa, and he was married to my sister's mum. And when they had a divorce, my dad met my mum at the chalet in the Sunshine Beach. And the rest is history. They're madly in love now, and they're just the most beautiful parents. But I moved back from Arakoon, moved in with my brother, and then I scored like my dream job of being a school teacher at the local primary school. I was literally in seventh heaven. I was single for the first time in my life because Kane and I were together for over 10 years. I was 25. I was living kind of somewhat alone. My brother was upstairs. I was downstairs. And I was just learning what true and independence was as a girl in my 20s. And I spent all of 3 months single. That is it. I was so excited to be single, living my best life. And then 3 months after, I very quickly jumped knee deep into my next learning curve. And that was in the relationship with my girl's dad. That's an entire podcast episode on its own, the podcast with my girl's dad. But the short version is that I fell madly in love with a man, had 2 children, and I broke my own heart and theirs and decided to leave my marriage when my youngest, Valley, was 3. Luca is now 7 and Valley is 3. My girls are honestly the shit. They are the coolest. They're my best friends and I just love them so much. And I honestly think anyone who is around them should feel a sense of gratitude. They're just funny, they're witty, they have massive big personalities, and minus all of my businesses, and I push my identity around my businesses aside and my identity as a woman, they are just the number one thing that I am most proud of is my girls. So I met their dad teaching at my school and thought he was honestly the funniest, most charismatic man. He just wasn't my type at all by looks, but he was really funny and he was really loud, and everyone just seemed so like attracted to him. He was like a magnet. And I remember when he asked me out and I just wasn't into it at all. I think I said no twice, actually. He'll probably kill me when he listens to this. He'll be like, no, you said yes on the first date. But yeah, I said no a couple of times, and then we went on a date, and the rest is really history. And between my girl's dad and I, we had a beautiful relationship until we didn't. So sadly for me, there was betrayal, and I chose to stay. And that's an entire fuckery in itself, to be honest. I believe I broke my own heart by doing that. Leaving a toxic relationship when your self-esteem is at rock bottom was honestly one of the most challenging things I've ever done. I have no idea really who I was back then. I look at old photos. I'm like, I don't even remember that time in my life. Like it just, maybe I was so like traumatized or so living in this different land in my mind that I just, I don't even remember. I don't remember breastfeeding my second child. I don't remember all of those really early morning and late nights with having both my girls as little babies, which is, it's really sad. So I think I look back and I look at old photos of me and I honestly clap and cheer for that girl because, man, I was so lost. I had no real direction in where I wanted to go because I was like drowning and coming up for an air and then going back and drowning. And like Luca, when she was a baby, she woke every 45 minutes until she turned 3. So I was dealing with that. I was dealing with a massive relationship breakdown. I was trying to deal with a newborn baby. I mean, Valley as a baby, and even now as a 5-year-old, she's just a dream. I love her. She's just adapts and so flexible and so cruisy, and I feel like that's what kind of baby she was for me. And one day when she's older, I'll thank her for being that kind of child that came in and into a shitstorm and just eased me and gave me so much peace. So yeah, I was in rock bottom. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had married who I thought was the man of my dream. I had 2 children and we built our dream house on the Sunshine Coast, and I truly thought that was it for me. That was my life, and it wasn't. And now looking back, thank fuck that happened. But now looking back, I'm like, God, I just see my life as all these different stages and phases, and each phase, I should say, has such a different lesson that teaches me so much cool shit. And rock bottom just allowed me I was like sitting in the fucking mud, and it just allowed me to crawl back up, like bit by bit by bit. And that's when post-Valley, I was diagnosed with post-natal anxiety. And I remember going to the doctor just going like, what is wrong with me? I want to sleep all the time. I have no energy. You know, Luca was on a middle of the day sleep. Valley was on a morning and an afternoon. And I just never wanted to leave the house. I was super overweight, super unhappy, and super unhealthy in all choices of my life. Not just what I ate and the physical movement, but what I was choosing to expose myself to, even online. It was just all so toxic. And yeah, I just crawled up bit by bit, and I did that by finding a love for running. So back in 2020, just before COVID hit, I lost 40 kilos, and like 40 kilos is the weight of my 7-year-old. Like it's a lot. It's, this morning I was at Fitstop doing back squats with 40 kilos on my back, and I was like, fuck, I've lost this amount of weight. I can hardly push it back up, but yeah, it's cool. I did that through purely just loving myself again, and I started a run club called Soul Sisters Run Club, and it was just before COVID hit. So I started running, and everyone around me was these incredible athletes. My best girlfriend, Ella, now she's about to go down to Ballarat and race in Ballarat to win $7,000, and she's an incredible athlete. And I was running, and I was this slow, overweight girl at the back just trying to survive, heavy breathing, and I was like, hey, more chicks will want to run if I create a space for them to feel comfortable to run in. So I was like, I'm just going to start an Instagram account and start Soul Sisters Run Club. And it honestly started from there, and it just grew and grew and grew. And I remember our first meetup, we had 10 girls. Then our 10th meetup, we had 50 girls, and then it just kept growing. And then it grew to girls in like Melbourne and girls in Perth and girls in random destinations going for a run and tagging Soul Sisters Run Club. We're now, April 2024, and we still run our run club today. So we run twice a week. It's the coolest space. It's an all-female run club where we just run, talk shit, drink coffee, complain about things, listen to things, share cool, inspiring shit that we've done that week or that we're excited to do. And we just encourage each other to do hard things like running a marathon. So at the moment, a lot of us are training for the Gold Coast Marathon that's in July. So I'll be running my 4th marathon. And I've got a goal of like a set time that I want to make this time. Shout out to my coach, Benita from Lace Up Running. She is doing everything she can to get me there. And I honestly, at the moment, feel like I'm the healthiest, fittest version of myself because I quit drinking last year and I've just been super focused on this goal. And all the women in Soul Sisters have been like a driving force for me to get this goal, as all the other women are a driving force to help them get their goal as well. So, yeah, I realized how much I just love Soul Sisters and how much I loved connecting with women and that community and that cheerleader aspect. So from having Soul Sisters Run Club and starting a really successful all-female run club, from there and also to being an educator, I realized just how much I love community and teaching and connecting with children and their families. And then my run club, I just knew deep down what my purpose was. I would like go for a run with the girls and just be like buzzing for a week, ready for the next run. Or I'd have an event at school where I would organize the social club event with all the teachers, and I'd just be buzzing after an event like that. So I knew my purpose was to give back. So I didn't need to sit and be a victim and deal with all the bad shit that happened to me. Because the victim mentality, if you take that mentality on, it can eat you alive. And I knew that I needed to get up and do what I was put on this earth to do. And that was just to give back and inspire and love and show empathy and just be a good fucking person within the community. And those two elements of the teaching and the run club helped me do that. So aside of that, side of hitting rock bottom and starting Soul Sisters and entering my marathon run journey, I actually started an Instagram account, and I was like, I'm going to start a side hustle and I'm going to start an Instagram account and I'm just going to sell my old clothes. Surely, like, I've lost 40 kilos. Surely there's someone out there that wants to buy all my old shit. Well, I remember starting an Instagram account and I started to sell my old clothes that didn't fit me anymore. And I remember in a week I made like $1,500 selling shit on Instagram. And I was like, maybe there's a business in this. And then obviously Marketplace on Facebook blew up, COVID hit. So everyone was trying their best to make a side hustle somewhere, particularly the people that weren't working or couldn't go to work. So I started this account. I started this Instagram account. It got a lot of traction. It was buzzing with girls selling and buying and, oh, I'll buy that if you buy this, and swapping clothes. And then I guess that Instagram account then grew into a local community non-for-profit business where I was the president. It was a circular fashion market where the community would come and sell their pre-loved clothing and make money instead of their clothing going to landfill. So within my pre-loved market, we actually we sponsored with a lot of local groups, a lot of my ex-students and their families, and did loads of fundraisers for local swim communities, local real estate agents. We did heaps of raffles and working with local cafes, and I just knew that was my purpose, is connecting with different people in the community. So After that, COVID hit, and that threw a spanner in the works of who could attend our market, who couldn't attend, counting numbers. I remember we had to hire juniors to stand on both the entry and the exit and have them count on an app how many people coming in, how many people going out. And then I had to do, checking for COVID vax passports and things like that. So it was a shit show, to be honest, and we were just drowning and surviving at the same time. But we somehow survived, and then I opened up a permanent market space where the community would rent a rack. So we started out with a small upstairs studio with 7 racks. So they would hire the rack for a month and we would sell their items and they would receive 100% of whatever they made. It came to me at 3 a.m. because a lady came to a market one time and she was like, I want to do this, but I just don't have the time to be standing here for 3 hours. And what happens if after the 3-hour market is over, I still have stuff there that I don't necessarily want to take home? So I came up with the idea really early one morning of, you know what, I'll just man the racks and I'll sell it for them. And we started with the small upstairs studio that then very quickly took over downstairs. And now today in our Noosa studio, we have over 80 to 100 wardrobes being sold there. And it's now called Thrifter. So at Thrifter, I made so many incredible connections with women in business and just local women doing cool shit. Therefore, cue this magical community of females doing cool shit. Because through Thrifter, I meet women of all different ages that have experienced all different things. I remember one time a lady came up to me crying, telling me that Thrifter had just completely changed her life because she was able to save money because she was buying for 5 children clothing. She was able to save money to pay her mortgage because she was coming to Thrifter to buy like $5 outfits for her kids. And I spoke to her for about an hour. Shout out to that lady if she's even listening to this. But I spoke to her for about an hour and just heard her story of her life. She was a single mom and all the shit that's happened to her in her life and how, Thrifter has just completely changed other avenues and aspects of her life just because she's allowed to save money and still, give her kids some great clothes. So Thrifter, we now have 3 studios. So we've got Noosa, we also have Kawana, and I am opening up Brisbane in West End in July. Super pumped about our 3rd space, and I do have one other thing coming for Thrifter that will be shared with the public once all of the lease and everything is signed, and then I will have my 4 babies that I will pour into. And I guess doing all of those things within the community led me to Females Doing Cool Shit. So I launched Females Doing Cool Shit in December 2023. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to start this group where cool women come and they just share stories and they're inspired by each other. Because for me, generation after generation, like our ancestors, they all learnt from each other just by listening to stories. And if there is so much power in just listening, like I have ADD and sometimes I struggle to listen, but when I really focus on listening to somebody else, like listening to somebody else's podcast, I love CEO School. I love listening to that podcast. When I listen, I just gain so much knowledge and so much inspiration. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do an event. So I launched in December. I had my best girlfriend Alexis come and 2 other speakers, and we had a sell-out event with 50 women on the Sunshine Coast wanting to build connections and wanting more of a community where everyone just cheers each other on. So I know that it can be a vicious world out there at times with women in business, sadly. It has proven to be bitter, it's proven to be competitive and sometimes nasty. I guess my inspiration for this podcast came when I chose to leave a business partnership. It took a lot to remove myself from a business partnership and be out on my own and be independent. But now looking back, my gosh, I'm so glad I've done that because it's allowed me to build some really incredible connections with some women that I truly value, I truly respect, and I truly look up to. and being open to these new friendships and relationships and business relationships, I have found that I'm just a different woman to who I was last year. And hands down, I put that down to females doing cool shit, because a lot of the women that I am now in connection with in my business world and in my personal world are from my events. Even my PA, she's from my event, and she sorts my life out. Literally, I walked into the podcast studio today having a conversation whilst listening to her audio recording in my ear, telling me all the shit I need to do, all the shit that she's done for me. So, it's just open up a whole new world for me. So it's funny how sometimes when you have this stage in your life where all this shit just goes wrong, and you're like, you leave a business partnership and you're like, oh, that's where I really thought my life was going. And then you do a full 360 and you're like, hang on, this path is just so much more comfortable and peaceful, and this is my true vision for my life. And yeah, females doing cool shit just opened up all these different avenues for me, and I just love this space. So this podcast, that's just a little story about me. You're going to learn a lot about me as we go on, but this podcast is just going to be real. It's going to be raw. It's going to be vulnerable. It's going to be relatable, probably funny at times, because I think I'm fucking funny sometimes. And it's just going to live off the idea that if you are brave enough to just try and give something a go, then true success will happen for you. Can't wait to share my first guest with you on the podcast on our next episode, and I look forward to talking to you all soon. Bye.